Okay, this final part of Chapter 1 is going to describe each of the 10 principles in turn. I'll list the principles and then discuss them briefly. This first section is about how people, individuals, make decisions. Main idea number 1, people face trade-offs. This is the basic idea that there is no such thing as a free lunch. There is no such thing as a perfectly free, costless decision. Any decision is going to involve something given up by somebody, usually the person making the decision. But people make decisions anyway because of costs and benefits. But that will be main idea number 3. Main idea number 2 is the cost of something is what you give up to get it. So if you are pursuing a decision, the cost can be the dollar cost, like buying an ice cream cone. The cost can be the sacrificed alternatives of what you could have spent your time or resources doing. You could have spent that money buying something else. You could have spent that dollar, that time, doing something else. So the cost of something is what you give up to get it. Main idea number 3. Rational people think at the margin. Mankiw defines a rational person as somebody who realistically and objectively looks at the costs and benefits of his or her decision. Margin means a series of little decisions, not gigantic decisions like what am I going to do with the rest of my life, but little decisions that will lead up to the large decision, aka the first day of today is the first day of the rest of your life. So what am I going to do today, and how is that going to lead to what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Main idea 4. Incentives. Incentives, as Mankiw describes it, are means to get someone to do something. Economics is the study of incentives. The price of a product is an incentive for both buyer and seller to either buy the product or sell the product. There are all kinds of incentives that people give out and people face that either get people to make decisions or and compel people to make certain decisions based upon the incentives that they face. You oftentimes call this rewards or punishments. Sometimes the rewards and punishments can be very defined. Sometimes the rewards and punishments can be very, shall we say, unintended. Alright, next slide. And the next slide is a little case study, something for you to think about. You are the mayor of Honolulu, and you decide whether to build a park in Kaneohe, Hawaii, which is where Windward Community College is located. And if you're the mayor, what do you think the costs are of such a park? What do you think the benefits are of the park? Which is more tangible, costs or benefits? Do you decide to build the park? So give you a chance, a second to think about this. Why don't you write down what the various costs are? What did you, and then decide what the various benefits are. And which are more tangible, costs or benefits? Tangible means measurable. And if you've written some of these things down, I would venture to say that the tangible portion of this equation is going to be the costs. Costs are always something that are out there. Benefits oftentimes are, maybe they're certainly real, but they're a lot more difficult to measure, especially if they're future benefits. Do people decide to build such things as parks? Well, yes, they do, if they feel that the benefits are better or more worthwhile or justify the costs. But certainly a rational person looks at, objectively, costs and benefits of every decision. Now we'll go on to the next set of main ideas, and they are all about how people interact. Main idea number 5, trade can make everyone better off. Trade between individuals and between countries, in which both parties specialize in the thing that they do best. If you specialize in the thing that you do best, like for me teaching economics, then you become very productive at doing that one particular thing. Your specialization or your comparative advantage may be very different than my specialization or my comparative advantage. We will study this in a lot more detail in Chapter 3. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. So a market is just an arena in which buyers are buying something and sellers are selling something. The market, or the interaction of the individuals through some kind of an auction mechanism or some kind of a show of goods and show of willingness, determine willingness to buy and willingness to sell. A market price emerges for that particular product. Now this market price is a very dynamic thing because it changes with the addition or subtraction of buyers and the addition and subtraction of sellers. These are what we call the great forces of supply and demand. More on this topic in Chapter 4. Main idea number 7. Governments can sometimes improve economic outcomes. Markets can fail to provide equity and or deal with unintended consequences. The most current example of this is the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. That was an unintended outcome of a market activity, and as such, the market can fail to do the right thing. And as BP is proving right now, it's taken them a long time to achieve society's best outcome, which very simply is plugging that damn leak. They're not doing it, or they're not doing it in the speed in which society would prefer to have them do it. Sometimes the government is needed to spur on private industry. Governments can also improve economic outcomes by having a clear and consistent playing field. We oftentimes like to refer to this as property rights, as a way and means in which people can give ownership to the fruits of their labor so that they can freely and trustingly sell those fruits of those labors without somebody ripping them off or stealing their ideas. Government provides a framework for those basic property rights so that people can engage in productive economic activity with some reasonable assurance that they are going to be getting the fruits of their labor. All right, now to our last slide on these 10 main ideas, and they are how the economy as a whole works. Main idea number 8, the standard of living depends upon a country's production. People do better if they are more productive in what society desires. And they will do better in terms of their standard of living, they'll do better in terms of their material well-being, their access to schooling, their general wealth if they produce more things that people desire, or what society desires. We'll study a lot about productivity in the macroeconomics section on GDP and productivity. Number 9, prices rise when the government prints too much money. If the government prints too much money, there is inflation. And with inflation, the price is not reflective of, shall we say, the true value of the item in question. Literally, too much money is printing too much goods. Since the government is the main agency, or the only agency that prints money, if they print too much of it, then the price of goods that the money serves as the standard of value of goes up. Finally, number 10, society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. If the government pursues growth, if the government tends to throw a lot of money at a problem to try to generate jobs and income, they risk the trade-off of inflation. If, however, there is too much inflation out there and government seeks to reduce inflationary pressures by reducing the amount of money in the economy, they risk unemployment because they risk less income for people. Income is very much tied to the amount of money that's out there. And so there's that very fine line, that very fine trade-off. This trade-off doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes we can have an increase in jobs, less unemployment, and decrease in prices. That goes back to main idea 8. If the economy is being productive, then we avoid this trade-off of inflation and unemployment for a period of time. In the 1990s,